Can you believe that we're coming into the 8th season?
No.
In season 7's intro, we talked about the fact that we are Trinitarian, that we're Calvinists, and that we believe that everyone is saved the same way. Abraham was saved the same way that I'm saved and you're saved. What other core issues do we stand by?
That, all the solas. Because we recognize those as core hermeneutical principles. They're like signposts in the road.
You and I are both Sabbatarians. We both keep a kosher diet, and we celebrate the biblical festivals. People have said that we're part of the Hebrew roots movement. Other people have said we're part of the Messianic movement. I see that the idea of practice being different in all sorts of denominations, which is why I consider myself a non-denominational Christian.
If there's, it's worthwhile if there's even a single person out there that hears a discussion and through our discussion, the Holy Spirit quickens that person's heart on a specific topic, maybe helps them in a way that they've been wrestling with the Word and trying to understand.
We have faith in Yeshua. We have faith in Jesus Christ. We're saved by faith alone, justified by faith alone. There's no work will save me.
I think we're gospel roots. We're gospel roots. In other words, we go back to the core promise of the gospel in the scriptures, and exemplified, like Paul says, in the promise, in your seed all the nations of the world will be blessed.
Here we go. Wednesday, October 13th, 2021. This is Messiah Matters number 361. I'm downsizing my library. It's a sad day. My name is Caleb Haig.
Oh, sorry. Distracted as usual.
Dude, get your head in the game. Get your head in the game, bro. What's going on, man?
I was hypnotized by the music. I'm just like, I was more following the groove than you're talking, so I missed the cue.
You can tell we're professionals here, people.
This is a professional
production. What? You fellas have nothing to worry about. I'm a professional. Professional what? All right. So a lot is going on. Okay. We have a producer credit up, and I would encourage everyone to go check it out. You can find a link in in the chat room right now. The chat has a link to it. You can also find it by going to Torah Resource. Actually, it's kind of weird how it works. Go to Torah Resource, go down to Messiah Matters. Actually, in the drop down under Resources, go down to Messiah Matters, click on that, and then actually it'll take you to a different site. Click on Executive Producer, and it'll take you back. Anyway, all of that to say, the reason why is because Reformation Day is coming up, October 31st, right?
That's right.
And basically what's going on is, oops, wrong one. Sorry, guys. Here's our producers. Basically what's going on is our graphic artist slash person who keeps us, together is Mike, and Mike created a wonderful new mug for us. It's supposed to look like, and it does look like, the Kentucky Fried Chicken label. However, The Colonel's not
I
there.
like it.
It's so good. It's so good. Yeah. So I'd encourage everybody, go buy yourself a mug. Yeah, it might seem a little expensive, but you know what? It's helping us out and keeping this show going. So we are grateful for that as well. All right. We got a good showing in the chat room already. And the numbers keep growing, which is always good. So, yeah. Hi, everyone in the chat room. Welcome. We're excited to be here. Okay. What's going on with you, man? How's life?
Well, as you know, my wife and I chatted and prayed, and we decided that I'm going to stay home from SBL this year, which, as you know, I was torn about. But the situation where we recently had that COVID bout that kind of knocked us out for 3 weeks, and the schedule of our fall is kind of behind. So it was just like making that decision was like, yeah, I think that's the right thing. And so I'm bummed that I'm going to miss out. However, I will
have enough fun for both of us. So
yeah. Thank
whatever.
you. You guys will have a blast and it'll be awesome. Thankfully, I still will be giving my presentations at SBL. 2 of them, they'll just be virtual, which is kind of weird, but that's half of SBL's virtual this year anyway. So, anyway, but so I feel kind of like, because that decision kind of was just made in the last few days, and so it's okay, but I'm still going.
Yeah, you should be. Because
what about you? What about your life? Your life has more.
Yeah, we got a lot going on.
More significant.
I'm trying to drywall right now. So anybody in the chat room who wants to come out to Washington State and help me drywall, then tape and mud, come on out. It sucks. And not only that, but I don't really have the money to do it. So it's interesting trying to do it on a shoestring.
And building material costs.
I'll tell you what. How's about this? If you want to help me out. You go ahead and shoot me an email, because I'm selling right now. I said I was downsizing my library. I got duplicates of some really interesting things, including, but not limited to, including a duplicate copy of Calvin's entire commentary on the Bible, 22 volumes, hardbound, very nice. It's very nice. Now, I found them going for, they usually go for around $900 to $1,000.
Wow.
Right now, if you email me, I got the whole thing, $450 or best offer. Buy it for someone for Reformation Day as a present. Can you imagine having this uniform 22 volume set of Calvin on the shelf? It's very nice.
It's very nice.
Or why don't you purchase my entire 22 volume set of Kyle and Dalich commentary on the Old Testament, $150. Or I do have a Encyclopedia Judaica as well. It's the first edition. You can buy that. I don't even know how many volumes. I think it's 16 volumes or something like that.
That's a shipment. You'd need to have it send a truck.
It's large. There's no doubt about it. $350. So I'll tell you what, chag at TorahResource.com. Come on, somebody
show some love.
You not only
build a library,
and help me mud and tape in my walls. Okay. That's not a joke. I was going to say, all joking aside, all serious content about my walls aside, here is how you can get a hold of us, 253-465-3205. It's 253-465-3205. You can also shoot us an email, as I just mentioned, and you can shoot me. This is my personal email address, cheg at TorahResource.com, chegg at TorahResource.com. And, of course, we already have mentioned TorahResource.com. Go to Torah Resource for all sorts of great stuff. Paul Archer says, GoFundMe for Caleb. No, I don't need handouts. Okay. I will give people good things for equal give, equal return. Right. I actually think that the prices for the book series that I'm trying to sell are actually good prices. I really do. So anyway, if somebody wants some good books, and not only that, but here's the other thing. Here's the real reason that I'm selling the books. It's not even to pay for my office. It's actually because my office is not big enough for the library that I have. So I have to downsize. And the truth is that These are all duplicates. I already have Calvin's entire commentary and in book form as well. So I have 2 copies of the whole thing. I also have Kyle and Dalich, the entire series, and I also have I have the first edition and the second edition of the Encyclopedia Judaica, and I have a duplicate of the first edition. So it's not like I'm actually, yeah. Anyway, that's what it is. Okay. Well, you see, everybody in the chat room's already stealing our thunder. Pop Culture Renaissance says, "Isn't the whole purpose of a Christian life to fear God and keep His commandments?" Yeah, Ecclesiastes 2. That, I mean, literally, when people say, "What was the purpose of life?" Well, that's it. Ecclesiastes 12, right? The point when all has been said, fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Yep. All right, show's done. Let's go. No, I'm playing. Right. I'm playing. We'll keep going. Okay. Now that we've told you how to get a hold of us, we've told you to buy my books. Let's actually get to it. Rosie writes in. She says, this is from a couple weeks ago, by the way. She says, I listened to last week's program, but still do not understand Rosh Hashanah. You said, and I don't know why people had such a hard time with this, but apparently they did, because we've gotten numerous messages saying people didn't understand. Anyway, you said if it is the 50th year, then there is something new about the coming year. Yeah, it's the Yovel. It's when all of the property reverts back to the original owner and the slaves go free, right? But that's not the only time, right? Every seventh year we have a Sabbath year for the produce, right? We have you're supposed to let the land rest. If you come in and you take the land, you're supposed to let it rest for what was it, 2 or 3 years before you plant. Well, when did that turn over? It wasn't in Nisan. It was
right. It's in the fall.
It's in the fall. So basically, the fact is that every 50th year is the Jubilee year. But the point is that the harvest New Year, or the agricultural, let's call it that, the agricultural New Year is in the seventh month, which is when Rosh Hashanah is. When that month flips over, that's the new agricultural year. Just like, let me give you an example. When is our new year on the Gregorian calendar? It's on, the new year starts on January 1st, right? New Year's Eve is December 31st. So you have a new year on January 1st. Well, when's the new school year? Everyone has a school year, and it starts
usually like back in late August, early September.
Early September is when we start, right? So the point is that yes, we even in our current calendar today have at least 2 New Years. We have the calendar
and then in terms of taxes, April 15th. Fiscal, what do they call it? Yeah, Yeah, exactly. There's all sorts of different cycles.
we have several New Years on our calendar, right? And nobody seems to have a problem with that. But as soon as you get to the biblical calendar and it has several New Years, then everybody's up in arms. Oh, that's not the New Year. Yes, it is. It's the agricultural New Year. So that's the point. Is that the 7th month on the biblical calendar is the agricultural New Year. And that's why it's called Rosh Hashanah, not because of some pagan Babylonian New Year. That's ridiculous. There's literally no evidence for that whatsoever. Yet people keep saying it, and it's frustrating. Anyway, she says, but what about every ordinary year? Is it to be claimed as a New Year celebration along with Yom Teruah? Yes, it is. That's the answer. Yes, it is. Okay. And somebody in the chat room, Aaron, says fiscal starts on October 1st. Fiscal New Year. Okay. Let's go to, so I hope that has answered the question. We're moving fast, and that's okay. Let's move to we have a phone message. And if you would like to leave a phone message for us, you can do so.
Follow the song.
Oh, yeah, here you go.
Messiah Matters wants to hear from you. Leave us a comment, a question or two. Call 253-465-3205.
There you go. Okay. So let's take this down off my screen for right now. And then let's move to, hang on just a second. I'm trying to find my phone message. Here we go.
Hi, this is Justin Wolpert, longtime listener, first-time caller. And after reading about all the sacrifices during the festival of Sukkot, I kind of wondered what you guys think is going on with the amount of bulls. Like, I don't think you've discussed this yet, but I mean, it kind of seems like they're counting down. Do you think they're counting down to like the last great day on the right after the technical festival of Sukkot, or do you think it's something else? I'm not really sure. And also, I don't know if you guys have ever touched on like genres of music.
Okay, hang on just a sec. He's going to go into so he's got two points here. We'll listen to the second point here in just a few seconds. For now, let's talk about the sacrifices at Sukkot. This is a really interesting question. I've actually written on this for our community for Alive in Messiah, and I got to dig it up somewhere. For those who don't know, and I'm going to get the numbers wrong. I forget. I think does it count down to 50? Does it count down to 20? I forget. Anyway, so
no, it's 13 to 7 over 7 days.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay.
So the question is, every day during Sukkot, there's a fixed burnt offering, like grain offering, etc., and a sin offering. Well, the burnt offering for rams over 7 days starts at 13 for day one, and then each day it's one less ram, or one less bull.
Right. From 13 to 7. Yeah, but here's the thing:
down
is
to 7. Yeah, and
actually
70.
Actually, no, it's down to 71 because on the 8th day there's one bull.
No, down to 7. I mean,
down to 7. but then on the 8th day there's one bull.
Right.
So it goes. It goes from 13 down to 7, then skips and goes to 1. Hang on, we have to mention there's been a good sized super chat in the chat room, and Yeshai is the one who gave it. So we will give you some love here. Thank you very much for the super chat, Yeshai.
You've been blessed.
Yes, you have been blessed. Thank you very much. If you want a specific sound clip, let me know and I'll play it. Okay, but back to the conversation. I think that the reason that you have the skip from, so I don't know the reason for 13 down to 7, and the rabbis say that it's 70 bulls for the 70 nations that are not Israel. That's what the rabbis say. I don't think there's any evidence for that. So I haven't figured out the exact reason why it goes from 13 down to 7. I'm sure that there is a reason. God is not arbitrary. But with that said, I think that the one bull on day 8, I think that represents Yeshua, because I think that the 8th day represents eternity. So 7 days in your normal calendar week, what happens? It starts over again, right? So you go 7 and then it starts back over at 1. So 8 represents eternity. It goes on. It's the only festival that has an 8th day. And so I think that one bull on the 8th day represents Yeshua and eternity. Thoughts?
Sounds pretty good. I think
Is that all we got?
One of the things that I get the sense of, like I imagine each day with that during Sukkot, where it's a festival of joy, and you see each day there's a smaller number of bulls. Boom, boom. To me, I think it's a kind of a sense of refinement, of like getting ready to enter the narrow gate.
Right.
Like, in other words, there's a separation of God comes and he takes away the wicked, right? He separates the chaff from the wheat. And that's the sense I get. It's like refining. And then, like, I agree, the 8th day, there's just one lamb, and that's that, or one bull. And that is, the narrow gate. I mean, you come in as an individual. You enter the kingdom as an individual, not side by side with anybody else. You come in.
Not because of your ethnic background.
Not because of your ethnic background.
That's a great point.
Yeshua died for you personally.
Right.
Not for you and not for your group. And you just happen to be you got a lucky ticket to be part of that group.
Right.
So we enter the kingdom through the narrow gate. The narrow gate, in my view, is one shoulder width wide. You go in as an individual, and you can't blame, you can't pass the buck. It's you. We all have to stand before it says the judgment seat of Christ.
Great.
And so anyway, but again, this is more of a midrashic reading. But I think it's really cool that the Lord set this up for us to talk about and to meditate upon.
Yeah, if you have a different understanding of the 13 to 7 and then the one bull, you can either email us or you can post it on our Facebook or on the comment section on this video. Okay, let's keep going with Justin's.
One other idea though,
Go
too,
for it.
is that one thing that connects, Caleb, what you taught at AIM and my view is that yes, Yeshua dies for us individually, but new creation. We become a new creation as an individual. I don't become born from above as a group, right? In the same way, it's like individual. And this gets back to last week's topic of particular redemption. Particular, yes, it's a nation. Yes, it's composed of all nations and tongues and tribes, and that's true. But every individual, I believe, was individually selected by the Father,
right?
And has a unique born from above regeneration by the Ruach.
Yeah. All right.
So that's what I think about that.
Okay, hang on just a sec. Let me get back to because I want to finish.
Oh, yeah, we got Justin had another. Hey, by the way, I don't know if Justin's in the thing listening today, but thank you, Justin.
Yeah, great.
It's great to hear your voice. I've seen his comments. He comments on our stuff all the time, but it's great to hear his voice.
Okay, here we go. We're going to continue with his message.
Like genres of music, do you think there is any kind of music that would not be appropriate to play a worship song with? So like, typically I think of like heavy, like really strong metal. I don't know, or other things. So just wondered if you had any thoughts on that after doing some like really basic look at the scriptures and what kind of instruments would have been around in the first century. Kind of seems like, well, and before that, kind of seems like everybody was kind of using the same kinds of instruments. So
okay, so there's a couple of things.
Lots of drums, and if it sounds like the Hoff goes off music, it's acceptable.
So I don't know if Justin was around and listening back in the day, but back in the day, Rob and I had a little contest. Rob does this thing every once in a while where he gets really worked up and quite mad, and veins start to pop, and he starts talking really fast, and you can't stop him, and we call it the Hoff goes off. Okay, and so we thought it would be really funny if we had the Hoff goes off music. So every time that Rob got to that point, I could play the music, and it would kind of give him the notion that he needed to maybe bring it down just a little bit. And when I say a little bit, I mean like a ton. Right?
I've been pretty good the last couple of years.
You've been pretty good the past couple of years.
I've backed off.
So we did. That's what we did. We both created music for the Hoff Goes Off, and then we played them for each other without on air live. We played them for each other without hearing them first. Like I didn't hear Rob's. Rob didn't hear mine. Rob's was so good, but it was like heavy metal.
We need to find the clip where you respond.
I will never forget that because that was freaking hilarious. Anyway, the point is that
the reveal.
Yeah, when that happened, we had several people, not a lot, but several people that were like, "This is the devil's music," because it has a beat that is of the devil. Like these were legitimate comments. They were not joking. They were like, this is satanic because of the beat. Okay, so we actually have talked about this, but it was a long time ago. So let's talk about it again. Sean wants to hear it. He says, please play it. Okay, let's see if I have.
We need the one that you made.
The Hoff Goes Off. Here, let's see if this is it. Goes off, ladies and gentlemen. Awesome. Anyway,
that was like Kellie. Okay,
yeah.
We need to.
I have
if
a
someone
clip.
could find.
I have a clip
of the original reveal. I want.
I have a clip of that.
Oh, good.
I have a clip of it. Somewhere. I'll find it.
We need to put it as a short.
Okay.
YouTube.
It's on YouTube as a short. I'm pretty sure it is.
Okay, cool.
I'll find a link. I'll find a link for
Okay.
you. By next week, we'll have it. Anyway, so all of that to say.
Okay, back to Justin. Yeah.
Yeah. So the question then at the time, and the question now was the music that Rob created satanic because of the beat? And here is my now.
Or the high-pitched screech.
Or the high-pitched screech. Right. Now, here's the thing: is that several things on this. First of all, Justin says worship music. So specifically for worship, I think that it is my personal opinion. There's nowhere in the scripture that says that a certain beat is evil or that a certain genre of music is evil. The content of the words that are in the music is actually what, because ultimately, what is it? Back when people were writing classical music, I forget what composer it was, but he wrote in like a 2/5 time or something like that. And this was considered like, that was like the rock music of the time. Like, you don't do that. It's that, like, that's
broke the rules.
Yeah, he broke the rules, and this was so. As culture progresses, we have a progression of not only genre of music, but we have a progression of instruments that are played, right? So, for instance, today we have electric guitar, and back in 200 years ago, there was no such thing as electric guitar, and so the idea is that, and Brandon in the chat room says definitely not a type of music that like certain music does bring feelings, right?
Yeah, there's a physiological
aspect to it. But the point here is that what gives us a different feeling today is no doubt going to be, so when I hear classical music, it tends to relax me. But people, when that classical music was being written, a certain kind of classical music would actually make them tense up. That doesn't happen for me. So once again, this comes back to the fact that culture changes how we react to certain things, how we're brought up in the music that we're around. I know people who like love, and I mean love, like heavy metal kind of stuff because that's what their parents listened to it or whatever. Well, that's not.
So there's like a cultural or a socialization or a cultural conditioning. Like,
right. Yeah, I used to listen when I was growing up. I listened to pop punk. That was like the thing, like Christian pop punk. And there are people who would listen to that. Like, to me, that actually takes me back to my teen years, which I definitely don't want to. Definitely don't want to be back in. And actually, I don't like those years of my life. So it's not good memories, but it brings up those nostalgic memories. It's not, the point, all of this to say that I don't think that there is a certain style or a certain beat or anything like that is satanic. What I think is that there are certain, obviously the content, the words, and the themes within the music are the things that I think will glorify or not glorify God. Now, with that said, when it comes to worship music, and this is going to be controversial, but I don't care. When it comes to worship music, I think that culture dictates what's appropriate for music in a certain given time. So, for instance, right now, I think that if you walked into a church and they were playing heavy metal for worship music, I don't think that most people would find that to be appropriate. Now, is that biblically inappropriate? No, it's culturally inappropriate. At least it is here in my circles. But I would say this is one of the reasons that I really enjoy the church that I attend. We sing hymns, and currently we sing hymns a cappella. And I find that to be the most retrospective I am able to focus on the words the most at that point for me personally. Now, somebody else is going to say, no, I really like the modern Christian music or whatever. Okay, whatever. That's up to people. And
I remember, I grew up in a real conservative Lutheran tradition, and we had only organ. And the two ladies, elderly ladies, they were amazing. The bass, and they had a great system, boom. And then everybody knew this 4-part, had a great choir, 4-part harmonies, right? On all the classic Lutheran hymnal, right? A mighty fortress is our God. And they were good at like doing the crescendo where it would get loud at the end of the chord and then pause and then boom, boom, which to me, when I heard heavy metal later, it reminded me of that. The power of that rhythm and the bass, like serious. If you've heard a good organ player who knows how to flip the tones and use volume and, dynamics and have a good system where you feel that bass in your body, boo, boo, boo. But I remember I came from that. And then I went, for example, to was it a Nazarene what's the Wesleyan?
Methodist.
I went to a United Methodist church. They had an organ and nice, like a flute player but they had, and to the same songs, but the hymnal had totally updated. Like they made a more, they added stuff and changed some of the words. I hated it. I was like, this is wrong. This is an abomination. Like, you guys don't even know what you're missing. I remember feeling that way. Like how could you took something that was sacred and you profaned it. Right. And I'm not talking about heavy metal. It's still an organ, flute, classical guitar, and maybe a violin, but the arrangement and the change of the words, it was like unacceptable.
I feel like that about most modern Christian music, because it's like, man, you're supposed to be a musician, make some good music. I literally hate modern Christian music. And it's not because of the words or the content or anything. It's because it sucks and I don't like it. Now, with that said, I know a lot of people who genuinely like that stuff. Here in Washington State, at least in Tacoma, 105.3, The Spirit is the Christian network. I can listen to it for about a minute and a half. And that's it's nails on the chalkboard, right? And even if people are doing hymns, it's like, you ruin this hymn with your horrible arrangement. What are you doing?
Not only that, words.
Yeah.
I remember I actually wrote a paper once a long time ago. I went and I took the claims of, like, the basic principles of American evangelical Christianity. And then I used that as the standard to judge what the top 20 Christian songs of a certain year were. And I went through all the lyrics and compared those, and there was a total gap. And so anyway, that's just that. The chat room
the chat room is talking about time signatures. I've played math rock before. That is difficult and it's fun, but the audience usually doesn't know what in the world's going on. And the reason why is because you're going from like some very interesting and hard time signature, or to, you're in 4/4 or 2/4, and then you move to like 8/12 or something like that, and the audience is just like, what is happening? And if the band is all together, it can actually sound pretty cool. But if the band is off, not good. Anyway, all of that.
But a lot of those early hymns aren't really in a specific. They do change time signatures because they're not based on a 4/4 or a 3/4 pattern.
Right.
They're based on the phrases, and if it's true that, like, Luther took, since we're talking about Luther today, apparently "A Mighty Fortress Is Our God," is that the one that was taken from there was a popular bar hymn,
right?
Or not hymn. Sorry, it wasn't a hymn. It was a her. It was no. And so he just adapted a culturally ingrained melody and just painted new words on it. And
Luther liked to drink too. I was looking at Luther quotes the other day. One of them was, "Beer is from man, but wine is divine," or something like "wine is from God," or something like that.
Yeah, if you have not looked at Luther insults websites,
it's so good. So I got one story before we move on. My wife took the kids. I forget what they were doing. They were picking something up from OfferUp or something. Anyway, and it's Panera was oddly, she said, and then here are totally insane. Anyway, longer than a half an hour conversation. And she said to me that she's not sure what her purpose is in life concerning God. Okay. Shortly after the call, I did a YouTube search for a bunch of my favorite Christian channels. I'm going to guess Ligonier Ministries, Desiring God, Grace to You. Let me know if I got any of them right. Okay. And I noticed that not one of these top channels talk about the purpose of a Christian life after receiving faith in Jesus. Is our purpose to simply live out life as saved individuals, or are we obligated, in a sense, to get the message of the gospel out? If we fail to do so, what is the cost? Was the Great Commission only to the apostles, or is it extended to all who follow Christ? I also think that many believers who come to Torah are often led to think that the rest of their lives is to simply keep rules in a book, and that this pleases God. Where are we going wrong? And how can we discover what we are actually supposed to do? Now, the beginning of wisdom is in the chat room, and so the mention of Torah observance, I'm sure, is going to trigger, but that's okay. What we're going to do is we're going to take this back to just sanctification of a believer in general, okay? So those who come to a understanding of sanctification, and I know that the beginning of wisdom is going to, because I know that he is a true brother in the Lord who agrees with us on many, many things, but I think that he would agree with us also on the idea of sanctification. Whether or not we are talking about exactly the same things in terms of the exact same commandments that might sanctify us, I think that the notion of being sanctified unto God after we come to Christ is something that believers do, right? We conform ourselves to what God wants us to be and who God wants us to be. And we see this even with Christ. And, if you love me, keep my commandments, so on and so forth. Okay, so now that we can all be under the same umbrella, let's talk about this. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay, I will start.
I'm an audience member right now.
I will start then. Well, we already talked about Ecclesiastes. The purpose when all, or the goal when all is done. Am I saying that right? Serve God and keep his commandments, for this is the chief end of man. I believe that this is ultimately the purpose of life. We are to glorify God. We are the purpose of our lives, whether, no matter who you are. A human is created, I believe, is created to glorify God. That is the sole purpose and function of a human being, is to glorify God. Now, there are some human beings who choose to follow that path and attempt at with all possibility to glorify God in everything that they do. And then there are those who reject that calling, and they find their calling to be more pursuing the flesh, right? So those who don't believe want to be wrapped up in things that have to do with money, or wrapped up in things that have to do with sexual pleasure, or wrapped up in things that have to do with drugs and alcohol, so on and so forth. Okay, all of that to say that the purpose of life for everyone is to actually glorify God. When we come to Christ, we realize that purpose, and then we attempt to fulfill that purpose. Okay, so with all of that said, let's narrow in. The idea of the Great Commission, is it only for the apostles, or is it for everyone? I'm going to argue here, and then I will pass this over to Rob. I'm going to argue here that the Great Commission is not something new that is given in the New Testament. Now, this is not my own thought. This comes from Walter Kaiser. He did a little book called Mission in the Old Testament. And I just read this book for school, and I have to say, it's probably the worst thing that I've ever read from Kaiser. I did not like the book. I thought that the book was 82 pages long. In those 82 pages, he tries to cram into 82 pages what should have been hashed out in 400 pages. A lot of the time he makes these passing comments. He tries to, anyway, the book wasn't good. That's all there is to it. And I know Dr. Kaiser. I respect Dr. Kaiser greatly. He has a lot of great things, but this is one of the misses. And I think that he should have I think this should have been a full book, 400 pages, or a book series. He could have done 2 or 3 volumes on this.
Caleb, you mean he tried to cram 5 pounds of meat in a 1 pound meat bag?
Yeah, he tried to cram 5.
Or is it the content that you don't like?
So okay, so I think
was the topic worthy of more
the topic
attention?
The topic was worthy of much more attention, and he'll actually make points that he never explains or hashes out. So he tries to say that in one place he tries to argue that Balaam was actually being called to God, because he's trying to show that Gentiles were called to God, and he uses Balaam as one of them. And I mean, the evidence that he gives is just, it should have been an entire chapter. He could have spent 82 pages on this, showing us why he believes this. Okay. With all of that said, the underlying message of the book is fantastic. And he actually convinced me of his argument in about 2 pages. And so all the rest was kind of fluff, but it wasn't good fluff. That's my point. And not to down Dr. Kaiser, because actually the work that he's done in other areas is just fantastic. With all of that said, what is the underlying message of his book? The underlying message of his book is Israel was given the Great Commission to take the knowledge of Christ to the nations, all the way back in the prophets. And let's go to the prophets and look. So in Isaiah 42:6-7, he says, I am the Lord, I've called you in righteousness. I will take you by the hand and keep you. I will give you as a covenant for the people, a light to the nations, to open the eyes that are blind, to bring out the prisoners from the dungeons, from the prison, those who sit in darkness. The same kind of idea is given in Isaiah 49:6. He says, it is to light a thing that you should be my servant, to raise up the tribes of Jacob and to bring back the preserved of Israel. I will make you as a light for the nations, that my salvation may reach to the ends of the earth. Now, for those who might say, well, he was talking to Isaiah, this is actually used in Acts 13:47 to call to as the marching orders for Paul and his friends. It says, for so the Lord has commanded us, saying, and he quotes, I have made you a light to the Gentiles, that you may bring salvation to the ends of the earth. What is the light that's supposed to go out to the ends of the earth? Well, Jesus tells us in John 8:12, he says again, Jesus spoke to them saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. So I think that the Great Commission that is given, go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you. I believe that this is a reiteration. It is not a new command. It's not something new. What he's telling the disciples to do is founded on Isaiah and what Israel was supposed to do, but what they had dropped the ball in. Israel had not done what they were supposed to do in taking the light of the knowledge of the seed that would bless all the nations of the earth. They had not fulfilled their role to take this to the nations. And so I think that this is just a reiteration to the apostles. This is what you're supposed to be doing now. So with that said, I'll wrap all this up and I'll throw it over to you. I think that once a person becomes a believer, I've used this analogy at my church numerous times. Actually, 2 weeks ago I used it, so sorry for anyone who goes to my church who is listening to this again, but I've used this analogy before. How do you know when you're talking to a vegan or someone who does CrossFit? And the answer is they're talking, because the vegan or the person who does CrossFit won't shut up about it. That's all they talk about. As soon as you meet a person for the first time, hi, my name is Joe. Hi, Joe. Nice to meet you. What do you do, Joe? I'm a vegan and I do CrossFit. I mean, this is kind of how the conversation goes, right? Why is that though? It's because they're excited about it. It's what they do in life. As believers, every single believer, whether you think you are or not, you're in ministry. You're in ministry full time. You can be in ministry full time by working at McDonald's. You can be in ministry full time by being a CEO of a company. The point is that it is our goal and our duty to talk about what is in our heart and what drives us in life. And that is Christ. It is the Lord. It is our covenant relationship with God. And so no matter what you do in life, you have an obligation to study the Word, to come close to God in prayer and in Bible reading, and to share that with the people around you. And if you haven't figured that out yet, and I'm not saying that everyone has figured that out yet, but if you haven't figured that out yet, I would sit down and take some time to assess your life and figure out how God is using you in your life as a ministry and how you can change things to dial that up. Take this one to 11. All right, over to you.
I think you did such a good job on that first bit of what my brain goes to, the Westminster Catechism, number 1, right? It's a list of doctrinal truths, the bulk of which I'm on board with.
Right.
But the number 1 is, what is the chief end of man? And it's the same question that we received from the listener, is that main question. And I think it's so awesome that, I don't know how many 100 years ago they composed this, but that was the first, that was number 1. That was the question that was worthy of the first question in a catechism designed to help a new believer or even an older believer go through and kind of consider all these gems from Scripture? Okay, number one, that's the question. What is the chief end of man? And the answer is two parts. Chief end of man is to glorify God. Caleb covered that really nicely. And to enjoy him forever. And so maybe I'll just talk about that one. And what does that mean, to enjoy him forever? It means that and Caleb already brought up the covenantal framework, that is the proper understanding of our walk with the Lord. That and the fact that we are redeemed by his act, right? By his act, and we are beneficiaries of the covenant blessings as his children. We are no longer children of darkness, right? We are new creations in God's kingdom. And because he's our Father, so that our life as we walk becomes more and more fruitful in terms of joy. Like I think in John 15, you're going to be pruned so that you're going to have more joy, right? I mean, the branches that aren't producing anything, they're going to be whacked off and thrown in the fire. But the fruitful branches, even those are going to be pruned, and so that be more fruitful. And Yeshua says that your joy may be full. So this increase in joy, and this also echoes back to Justin's voicemail about Sukkot, because Sukkot is about a fullness of joy. And that joy it could be, I like it in Peter where he talks about a husband and wife participate, they're heirs of the grace of life, right? And they're one, and that there's a joy. There's a joy in just as he blesses us. Oh, I won the lottery, or, I finally, I don't know, whatever earthly kind of thing that someone might rejoice in. It's not that kind of joy. It's a joy of that intimate knowledge of you are in covenant with the Creator, and we stand back to Romans 5. It's a relationship where we're standing in God's grace. We didn't earn our way into it. It's not like I had to go pass a couple tests in order to earn my way into God's good favor. So just on that second aspect of that first point of the Westminster Confession, or Catechism rather, that to enjoy him forever. And then but it does add another aspect to the question, because the question sounded like in this world, right? So I have a life as a post-regenerated new believer in this world, and then I'm going to die. The Westminster Catechism doesn't divide it like that. It's just from your regeneration on, right? It does, this idea of physical death doesn't really, it's not a major impediment to this relationship with the Lord. And then other than that, just talking about that, is just the passages like, I think it's in Colossians. I think, Caleb, you've been in Colossians more recently than I have, but there's something in Colossians, maybe even in Ephesians, about doing everything unto the Lord, no matter what you do, and always singing, and always having a song or a praise. I love the story that your wife shared about the kids at Panera Bread singing a beautiful classic hymn,
right?
Because that's the joy I'm talking about, right?
Right.
And so anyway, those are my thoughts on the matter.
Good. So I want to bring in something different to this conversation, and it is something that I think this is going to be the controversial part. Notice I do it at the very end. We got 10 minutes left, and I know that there are people who just do not like this, but that's okay. I get a lot of pushback for this view, and you can hear this a little bit. Paul wrote, someone named Paul, not the Paul that's in the chat room right now. Paul wrote,
Paul, not Paul.
Paul, not Paul. Wrote on one of our videos. And this was a conversation, so I'm going to break down the conversation for you. And this is what he says. He says, so, not sure if over time I have heard Caleb say, just go to a biblical church. Any biblical church? Question mark at the end of that. Any biblical church? even if they don't believe/teach Sabbath, clean food, or working on their chosen Sabbath. Now, I want to stop and say I got an email from someone this last week who has been going to a Christian church, traditional Christian church, loves it. And her husband absolutely love this church. They've been there for a really long time. And they have recently been confronted by one of the pastors who wrote something against my father. And basically, they're kind of being called out now. They've never tried to tell anybody, you need to do this or anything like that. They've just been a part of this church. And now their leadership is kind of trying to maybe push them out because of their belief in Seventh-day Sabbath and so on and clean food. Stories like this to me are heartbreaking, and I hope that they can resolve and be able to continue on in that community with those people. Anyway, with all of that, I say that just to say I realize that not every time people are going to be able to get along with different beliefs. One of the things that I think happens for those who believe that they should be keeping the Sabbath laws or the kosher laws or anything like that, what they tend to do is they become what we call Torah terrorists. They want to convert everyone. And so a lot of people who hold to those kind of views are not able to just sit in the pews on a Sunday and be a part of a community. They're not, because they are always going to stir the pot. And so I don't think that that's necessarily our job, is to stir the pot. Rather, I think that we're supposed to be an example of what we believe Christ wants us to live, how Christ wants us to live. Anyway,
but you got to be ready that something like that can happen, and
right.
it'll hurt. In other places, if you might go to a church and they'll say, look, if you're going to attend this church, we're going to funnel you towards membership, and you've got certain classes you have to take. They might have closed communion. Right. Like, unless you're a member, and so there's legitimate, issues that are going to come up depending on the community.
Right. So anyway, this person goes on, they say, how do you find community if in your region it is dominated by one or two denominations? I could go and eat sugar with them and then go home and try to find my own meat, or I could go to and constantly watch life coach seminars every weekend. Again, no meat, just great production. What to do? Now, I responded and I asked, where is this person at? And this person said, I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. Now, to me, you're in the Bible Belt, and I find it difficult to say that here's what's going on. And I truly believe this. If you're in a place where there are legitimately no Bible-believing Christians who have a community there, you know what that is? That's unreached. That means your wherever you're living is unreached by the church. And you can call different churches and say, hey, I live in a place that's unreached, send some people out. They'll send missionaries out to you and start a church. I mean, that's like you're in an unreached area. Or you are not, or that area has been reached and you're just not willing to call those people brothers and sisters. So what did I do? Well, I jumped on to 9 Marks. They have a church finder on 9 Marks. I plugged in Asheville, North Carolina. 12 communities came up. Most of them were either Presbyterian or Baptist. I responded and said, I found, X amount of communities. These are the top 3 that I would check out if I lived there. And, here's some, and these are the other ones I'd check out. I'd go to every single one of these to try to find a community. Okay, so we went back and forth a little bit. This is what Paul Not Paul wrote back. And he said, I am still not sure I am fully grasping the concept. Am I to go to a church, even if it believes Sunday is the Sabbath, pork is fine, even desired here in the South, and Christmas and Easter are the only 2 festivals to partake in? Are you saying community trumps all that? Okay, this is a great question, and this is what I've gotten a lot of pushback on. Here's my belief on this. First of all, and I wrote back with a number of questions. One of those questions was, do you think that these people are believers? In other words, are these people going to be in the kingdom, or are they damned by God over these things? That's the first question. So the very first thing that I would try to establish if I was in that area is, do I have brothers and sisters in the Lord? Because if I have brothers and sisters in the Lord, then interaction with them is something that I should strive for, whether or not we agree or not. If they are brothers and sisters in the Lord that are going to be in the kingdom, then I need to treat them like brothers and sisters in the Lord. That's number one. The number two question is, do we believe that community is commanded by God? Non-optional, commanded by God. If the answer is yes, and you have believers in your area, even if you disagree with them, then I would argue that you're now neglecting a command of God. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And that doesn't mean that, there's reasons that we would separate from other believers. There is good, legitimate reasons to separate from other believers. But what this brought up to me is that once again, our life is a ministry. We are supposed to shine forth the glory of Christ. Now, if we believe that there are believers in the area that don't agree with us or are off theologically, God works on people. I came from a Christian church, and I think most people who believe in a seventh-day Sabbath and that they should keep the kosher laws came from a Christian church. That means God worked on us. I think one of the main problems that people in the Torah movement have, no matter what branch of the Torah movement you are, number one is that we put a low value on community. That's number one. And number two is that we think that community, and I'm saying we because I don't want to single anybody out, but we think that community is only for us. What can I get out of it? Oh, if I'm going to go there and they're not going to feed me the way I want them to feed me, I'm not going to go. And I don't think that this is the way that the Lord wants us to think about it. Now, with that said, am I going to go to a Christmas celebration with my kids? Absolutely not. I'm not. I'm going to skip certain events that the church is putting on if I have to. But ultimately, the point is that God might want you to go somewhere because he might want people in that church not to hear you debate the pastors, but he might want you to go there to show that you love people and that you want to serve Christ and that you're just going to do that by loving people. That's it. And you know what? People will see that and say, I see Christ in you. And people inevitably will start to ask you, maybe not about the Sabbath, maybe not about your kosher beliefs or whatever it is, but they're going to ask you about your relationship with Christ. And that's where you shine forth Christ. That's my belief. Now, I can already hear the emails getting typed up. That's totally fine. Send your emails in. I will have this conversation and debate with anybody who wants to. But I believe that if we have brothers and sisters in the Lord, we should try to commune with them if we have no one else to commune with.
And I think at one other little point, if you're going, let's say you're just going to a church and you're just meeting people. I mean, at a very basic level, you're meeting other people in your area that are gathering in Yeshua's name or in Jesus' name, right? Before you even get into theology. I think the way the Ruach works is that you're probably going to connect with people, I would say, that the Lord wants you to meet. Right. And because they, just as you're required to love them, they're required to love you. That means it's a two-way street. And if someone's going to get caught up on the fact that you keep the Shabbat or you're not going to eat the ham sandwiches that they're serving, that's really their problem. That doesn't have to affect your desire to love them, right? That's an issue. If they start trying to coerce you and stuff like that, right, it might hurt. That might really suck. But then you're going to have to go and pray and seek to stay connected. And if it's going to be like the one story we heard, ultimately you're going to say, sorry, the pastor steps in or whatever and says, you're not allowed to come here. That might be your problem then.
Well, that's on them though.
No, I know. But what I mean is if you go to several churches and they've all asked you to leave, you need to look in the mirror because that's I'm saying it could happen, but I think we got to trust the Ruach. We got to trust that God doesn't care about the building. God doesn't care about the denomination name. I had a guy call what he's doing is working on the network of believers so they can love each other and be in community and not be alone. That's the opposite of this. Does God want us to be alone? No.
So I had a guy call me recently, and I love this brother in the Lord. He's just been beat up a lot through life and whatnot. But he got into a place. He moved to a place, and he said, "There's no community around me, and it's a big city." He said, "I just can't get along. I just can't sit in a pew and listen to a pastor."
Oh.
And I said, well, it sounds to me like the problem is not the pastors. The problem is you. And that was hard for this gentleman to hear. But the point is if you, exactly what you said, if you can't stay in if you can't stay in
it's
a community,
famous, yeah.
If you can't stay in community, you go to 3 or 4 different communities and they keep asking you to leave. Guess what? That's not the community's fault. At this point, you need to look in
this is the PG version is or the G is if you wake up in the morning and you go out and you meet a jerk, then that's a jerk. But if at the end of the day all you've met is jerks, you're the jerk.
Exactly.
I think that's it's a different word, but
yeah. I completely agree with you. The point is that God might be sending you to communities to make you realize that you're the one who needs to be worked on. You think that you have it all figured out because you're a Saturday Sabbatarian or whatever. Look in the mirror. There's other things.
And you can be forthright. You can go meet the pastor or assistant pastor. Say, "Hey, I'm new to this community. What I like about I'm here. I want to learn about the doctrines of grace, and I want to hear some. I'm here to preach the Bible exegetically. Gone through exegetically, etc. And just so you know." I'm oriented towards a Seventh-day Sabbath, and that I'm not going to be broadcasting that to people, but I just feel like I want to let you know up front because and every situation's unique, but it could be if a year or two goes by and you've been there and all of a sudden they discover this,
right? That
could also be like, well, you weren't really honest with us. And so now you prevented real relationship from ever really happening. And now we're like,
every situation is its own situation. There's no doubt about that. All right. It's been a good conversation, but it's time for us to go. Conversation 253-465-3205. Shoot us an email, hey@GetTorahResource.com. In the chat room, somebody said that they know people in Asheville, North Carolina that have a Torah group. And so maybe we'll try to connect Paul, not Paul, with these people. And
I love it.
Yeah. And don't forget to subscribe, please. We need you to subscribe if you're not subscribed. And if you are subscribed, please like this video. It helps us. I know it sounds weird, but it actually does help us. We hope that this conversation has done at least one thing, and that is to glorify our great God and Savior, Yeshua the Messiah. Why? Because Messiah matters.